Welcome, board members, to the 60th Annual General Meeting. I remind all members to please turn all electronic devices to silent. I'd also like to advise all in attendance that the meeting is being recorded and/or live streamed. The archived recorded meeting is available on the NPCA website. The recorded video of the full authority meeting is not considered the official record of that meeting. The official record of the full authority meeting shall consist solely of the minutes approved by the full authority board. At this time, we'll move directly to the election of officers for the NPCA Full Authority Board. Can I get a mover and a seconder to appoint Ms. Crystal Caputo and Mr. Michael Reels as scrutineers should an election be required? Moved by Member Corbett, seconded by Member Shurton. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Thank you. Calls for nominations for Board Chair. At this point, for the first time, I'd like to call for nominations for NPCA Board Chair. We'll only need a mover for this purpose. Member Greenwood.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. I'd like to add an item to the agenda, please.
I will be getting through the election of officers, and you can position that to whoever the chair will be.
Okay.
So I need a mover for chair. Member Kaspersets. Yes.
I'd like to nominate Mr. Dave Balsamia.
Member Balsma, you accept? Thank you. Okay, thank you. For a second time, is there a nomination for NPCA Board Chair? A mover only. Yeah. And I have to ask for a third time, any mover for nomination for Board Chair? Seeing no other nominations, can I get a mover and seconder to close nominations for Board Chair? Moved by Member Kaspersets, seconded by Member Zalepa. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Congratulations to our 2019 NPCA Board Chair, Chair Balsma. At this point, I'd like to move forward with the nominations for Vice Chair. Is there a mover for an NPCA Vice Chair? Member Height.
Anna Houston.
Member Houston, do you accept?
I do.
Thank you. Is there a nomination for NPCA Board Chair for a second time? And a third time, and any motions for NPCA Vice Chair? Seeing none, can I get a mover and seconder to close nominations for Board Vice Chair? Moved by Member Zalepa, seconded by Member Shurton. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Congratulations, Vice Chair Houston. At this time, I'd ask Chair Balsma to assume the chairing the meeting.
Thank you very much. It was seems a little silly, but it's thorough. Okay, so at this time we're going to take an opportunity to address the concern that was raised by Member Greenwood, and there was a concern about adding or subtract or making changes to the items on the agenda. So, Member Greenwood, if you wanted to...
So I'd just like to put an addition to the agenda to move into closed session to discuss a staff matter. Whenever that is.
So I hear what you're saying. So that's a motion. It's somewhat incomplete, so I would like to ask you to, so as I understand it, when we go into closed, anytime we go into closed, we have to have the reasons for going into closed as stated in section 11 of the bylaw. And so I'm just wondering if you would kind of round out your...
I'm putting a motion on the floor to move into closed session to discuss a staff matter, and I was just adding that to the agenda. Once we get into the closed session, then I will put the motion on the floor. Is that not the appropriate way? I'm just adding to the agenda at this time. We haven't moved into closed session.
Okay, so I'm going to just, for the sake of this first section, just ask if there's a seconder. Member Shurton.
I'll second it, but I'd like to speak on it.
Okay, so at this time, there's a motion to add a closed section to this agenda. It's been seconded by Member Shurton. So just on the discussion of entertaining a closed portion of this meeting. That's what we're discussing right before us. Go ahead, Member Shurton.
Well, knowing that this is an AGM, knowing that we have our first meeting next week, knowing we don't have our human resource lawyer here, I would suggest, why can't we wait a week? So I will be voting against this motion to go into close today and follow with the agenda we have for an AGM.
Member Zalepa. I was going to start.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'm going to speak against the motion as well. I think that when you're moving to go in camera, you got to have a little bit more specific reason as to why, and you got to give better notice as to why we're doing that. I think I'd like to hear some opinion from the staff on that. I think that there's a better way to do that. Also, I concur with Member Shurton. I'd rather do this not inside an annual meeting. So that's my opinion. Yeah.
Thank you, and I saw somebody on this side. Go ahead, Member Clark.
Yeah, so the way the Municipal Act is worded and the Conservation Authorities Act is worded, there are specific reasons why we can go in camera. It is up to the board to make the decision to go in camera, but the board actually needs to have the information before them as to what is to be discussed in camera so they can make a decision as to whether or not it is rightfully proper for the board to go in camera. So since we don't have a confidential memo from Member Greenwood, I can't support it, and I would suggest that we get that type of memo so that it can be attached to the next meeting date.
Anyone else speaking to this motion before us? Go ahead, Member Whalen.
I don't think it'd be fair if it's a verifiable staffing issue that we bring it public, if that was the case that Member Greenwood is speaking of. If that's the case, we should keep it in camera and take it that far.
Member Whalen, can you just repeat that again? For some reason you're...
Is this working now?
Just a little, they're all free.
All set?
There's no wires.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't believe that if it's a verifiable staffing issue that it should be brought public, if that's what Member Greenwood is speaking of, that we should take it in camera and discuss it there.
Okay. Okay. So Member Beatty and then Member Kyokyo. Go ahead.
Am I correct in assuming that we need a 2/3 to change the agenda?
Yes, you are correct in that assumption. Councillor or Member Kyokyo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think if Member Greenwood thinks it's an important issue in regards to staffing, well then in camera is the way to go, or we discuss it. She can start asking her questions under new business, and then it's your decision whether it's an in-camera session or not.
So we have, okay, any, yeah, okay, anyone else wishing to speak to this? Seeing none, then I'm going to call the vote on adding that section and to our agenda. All those in favor?
It's for a recorded vote, Mr. Chair.
Ask for a recorded vote, okay. Okay, so we need, well, again, just to reiterate, we need the 2/3, so I'm going to pass the mic over to...
Member Beatty? Member Kyokyo?
Yes.
Member Clark?
No.
Member Corbett?
No.
Member Foster?
No.
Member Greenwood? Yes. Member Height?
Yes.
Member Houston?
No.
Member Encina?
Yes.
Member Johnson? No. Member Jordan?
Yes.
Member Kaspersets? No. Member Shurton?
No.
Member Whalen?
Yes.
Member Zalepa?
No.
Chair Bilesma?
No.
Fails 2/3.
Okay, then I'm going to ask, go ahead, Member Houston.
So I'd also like to add an agenda item that the board endorse the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Foundation Board to consist of a majority of citizen appointments.
Okay, so it would guide me a little bit. Where would you like that placed as a after correspondence? It probably isn't a correspondence item, so
I think it'd be appropriate within the selection of board members to committees.
so the motion is to add an agenda item dealing with the NPCF.
Yes.
Okay, so there's a motion before us. I need a seconder to add. Okay, it's been seconded by Councillor or Member Foster. Discussion on adding an item dealing with NPCF. Go ahead, Member Zalepa.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to actually raise a couple other, because I see there's a couple other committees that are missing from the appointment, and so I guess my question not directly related to that, but also the other committees, including audit, budget, watershed, floodplain, water quality improvement, grant review. I guess my question through you, Chair, to the staff is, when would those appointments be if it's not at the annual meeting? My assumption would be it would be here.
So I'm going to ask probably, CAO. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So this agenda was prepared in consultation with Chair Bilesma, and there's a recognition, and we'll get into the correspondence items as well, with that Niagara Regional Council motion suggests that the 12 members here are here for 3 months, and it was an anticipation to try to prioritize the CAO selection process on the governance board composition issues within the next, till March 6th. We are prepared as staff to populate all the committees, should you wish today. It's just understanding not all those committees would meet within the next 4 weeks.
Thank you for that, if I could follow up. So if we were not to appoint members to these various committees, who would be on those committees as of today?
For example, the Audit Committee and Budget Committee have done their work, so we have some time. They could be appointed in March or April and get back. So to answer your question, those members would not have any members. Those committees would not have members.
Yeah.
I apologize. To answer your question, Member Zalepa, those committees would not have any members until such time they're appointed.
So they would, in effect, lie dormant. Member Clark.
So I'm trying to understand exactly what the bylaws and the policies are with regards to the foundation. CRA indicates that the foundation is an independent body. They have their own letters of patent and they're created as such. So I'm trying to understand what policies are here that would indicate that this board selects the board members for an independent charity registered under the CRA under the charities regulations.
At this point, I don't have an answer for that. I don't know if we may even get an answer for that question here today. As a chair, I'm dealing with a motion to add something to the agenda dealing with the NPCF. So we're not entertaining a discussion on the actual motion, but the fact that we could put it into an agenda. So I have a mover and a second to add something to the agenda that could facilitate a discussion, a broader discussion, at a later moment in this meeting about the NPCF. So just to be clear, we're not discussing the content of the motion, but that it be added to this agenda. Any other comments or questions? So go ahead. Yeah.
So we're being asked to make a decision to deal with something that we don't have the information before us indicating what the letters of patent are, what the rights are on the foundation, what the federal government says is the responsibility of that foundation. Can it not be, and I asked the member, can it not be deferred until the next meeting so we can actually have that information? The motion may be completely fine.
Yeah.
Well, I don't have that information, and I'm not sure if everyone around the room is in the same situation.
Okay. Go ahead, Member Houston.
Maybe I can provide a little more information just for context. I did speak with the current employee at the foundation. She indicated the board was going towards a majority citizen representation. So this motion is purely symbolic in that it makes public our understanding of our relationship to that and just endorses that they're moving towards a majority citizen board.
Okay, thank you for that, and then Member
in
Clark.
response to that, and thank you for that, because that does help. So it would be, I think, helpful for me personally, I can't speak for everyone else, if at the next meeting we actually have a document, a memo from the foundation ED, I'm assuming, indicating that, and if that is the case and we have the information with that memo, then it would be prudent for this board to endorse such action by the foundation. But we can't direct them to do it because we're a separate agency. So again, I'd suggest deferring it to the next meeting. Thank you.
Okay, Member Johnson.
Yep, thank you. And my question actually is to Member Houston. Is there a time sensitive on this that it needs to be dealt with today and cannot wait until next week?
Through you, Chair, the feedback I got from the staff member is that she's currently without a board and wants to move forward on selecting a board. So I believe she did send an email out to all of our board if someone was interested in being on it. So I guess putting it forward today helps clarify that she is looking for a citizen appointments and can move forward just knowing that we are in support of that.
Okay, and again, going back to Councillor or Member Clark's questioning, if this is a third party, it's its own entity, it's its own charity, our endorsement is advertising rather than, it's not time sensitive, it can wait a week. I look at the AGM folks as being wrapping up last year. Let's get this and we'll put that to bed, put a nice bow on it, and then next week we start with next year. We start with our brand new year. So And I really appreciate you coming forward. And once we get the information, I'll probably wholeheartedly endorse what you're asking us to endorse. But I think just getting the facts on the table is going to be very important starting next week. And let's move. And let's get our nose to the grindstone and go.
And thank you for that. Anyone else wishing to speak? Member Kaspersets.
I kind of made some promises that I wouldn't talk, but since I did sit on the foundation board, I just want to clarify. The foundation board retained Liz Palmero, who is well respected in the Niagara region, and Liz put together an entire governance review and governance recommendations into moving forward in selecting the committee and selecting the new board members for it. It was quite clear in the Auditor General's report that the Conservation Authority and the foundation are two totally separate entities, and one shouldn't be mixing in with the other. I do know that Andrea is moving towards setting up a citizen appointment, to the board, and like I said, we're following the guidance that Liz Palmero put together. So for us to all of a sudden populate the board with board members goes against what the Auditor General, in fact, was saying. So they are two separate, distinct.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for that information. Anyone else wishing to speak on adding this to the agenda? At this point, we're not going to have a discussion, but we're going to add it to the agenda. Seeing none, then I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor of adding this to the agenda, please raise your hand. Opposed? And I'm going to call, and it's for 2/3, I'm going to call that defeated. Okay. Back to the agenda as was forwarded to you. Can I entertain a motion to accept the agenda as the one that was presented? Member Kaspersets, a second. Member Corbett. Further discussion? All those in favor of using this agenda, please raise your hand. Contrary? And that is carried. We have an agenda. So moving on through our agenda, then we are on item 1.2.1, a letter dated December 7th, 2018 from the Niagara Region respecting interim appointments to the NPC board for a period of 3 months until they determined how to proceed with board composition. Can I get a mover and a second for a motion to receive the correspondence items so that we may open the floor for discussion? Member Johnson, seconder, Member Beattie. The floor is open. There is, I just would like to point out, there is legal counsel available to answer questions from the board should that be desired. And I also wanted to say that you have the 3 letters of correspondence that were included in your package that was delivered. So with that, Member Corbett, please go ahead.
Yeah, if I may, our recent council and committee passed a resolution for our mayor, our staff to reach out to Hamilton and Niagara to create a dialogue to see where we fit into this composition.
Any other, go ahead, Member Beattie.
Do I take it from that then that Haldeman has passed a motion that the 3 funding municipalities sit down and try to resolve this?
Yes, that's a consideration based on all the flux that's going on now to clarify whether people can sit here or not.
Thank you.
Member Shurton.
Thank you, Chair. Are we speaking on all 3 of these or just the first? All 3 of them? They're all grouped together?
Right now, all 3 of them are on the floor. I did read the first one, but the mover and the seconder were to receive the correspondence items, and so all 3 are before us, and we're going to deal with them as a whole because I think they kind of form a fulsome composite of why we're here today and who we are. Okay. So if you wanted to deal with something in the Hamilton one or the Haldeman one, you're at this point I'm giving you that's totally legitimate for you to deal with. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Yesterday we had our first CIC for the new year, and based on, we're not sure of the timelines when all our meetings are going to be, and Councilor Corbett's on a couple other committees. So effective for next week, we appointed Mr. John Metcalf to be on this board, replacing Councilor Corbett. So, so that's going to be ratified probably Monday night. So I'm just giving you a heads up that Haldeman is still on the understanding of having 2 members here, but it'll be John Metcalf that will be here at the next meeting.
Okay. Thank you for that information. And then Member Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it. So from Hamilton's perspective, the council has voted for 4 positions be added to the NPCA board. 2 of them will be sitting city councilors and 2 of them will be citizens. The selection committee meets, I think it's next week, Tuesday. And the NPCA was pushed to the front of the line for the selection committee so that we can make decisions on the 2 citizen members. I can advise that Mr. Eisenberger, the mayor of Hamilton, has been having some conversations with mayors in Niagara and Haldeman, looking to find the compromise position. I'm not sure what will come of that, but it will be reported back to council, and the council would naturally have a discussion about ratifying that. But the city's position is that at the present time, Hamilton's appointees, the 4, are permanent appointees for 4 years unless recalled by council or the selection committee itself. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I had Member Height.
Yes, I'm not sure who wants to answer this, but when I heard about Haldeman, are you replacing Mr. Corbett, or are you just having someone come for 1 week? Because that's, I don't think we can do that. Have someone just replace someone for 1 week and then come back, especially if we're going to deal with something in camera. So that seems odd. So I'm not sure if Mr. Corbett's staying or not.
If somebody can provide clarification from Haldeman, go ahead, Member Corbett.
Yes, if I may. The last meeting we had a number of members who couldn't make it because they were on Police Services Board today. I find myself in conflict. I too am on the Police Services Board. I have meetings with Health and Social Services Advisory Committee where conflicts in times. And seeing as I don't see a steady time when you're having a meeting here puts me in conflict. I'm going back to the GRCA. With that committee, I attended all 48 meetings in last term. Right away in this term with this board, I will be missing a very important meeting next week because I am on the Police Services Board. I'm a chairman, so I put myself in conflict, and that's the reason. It's nothing other than that. It's conflict for me to be on.
My question is, are you coming back after? Okay.
No. Oh, no, that's a permanent, and I'd be quite happy to be back there so I know what's going on. Every last Friday of the month, I know I had a meeting. And as I say, I look at the meeting dates that are with the NPCA, and I can tell you, you're all over the map.
Okay, thank you. The other question is, a gentleman mentioned the mayor from Hamilton has reached out to Halderman and the mayors in Niagara. Are they reaching out to all 12 mayors? Because if they are, the suggestion would be there are 27 members from Niagara that should be here if we're going to use the act. So I'm wondering, is that what the mayor of Hamilton is doing, reaching out to all the mayors, or if he's only reaching out to the regional chair?
Okay. I don't have, there's a question there. I don't have an answer to, so we have Paul, Mr. DeMello. There we go. It may be appropriate for Mr. DeMello to roll that just a little bit into the tail. I know you'd be, yeah, there we go. Wherever you feel comfortable. If you want to come right up and be surrounded, that's fine. Yeah.
This way, certainly.
Oh, so it's almost right in the back.
There you go.
Well, you know what? If everyone can see and this is acceptable, then we'll do that. Go ahead.
Oh, so you want?
Oh my.
You said it. To it here.
All right, we'll put the tape on the floor. I'll never ask for the podium to be moved again.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. As some board members are aware, there are a number of new board members. I am counsel. I've acted as counsel for the NPCA on a number of matters in the past. I've also acted as counsel for Region of Niagara with regards to other matters. I've worked in Haldimand, I've worked in Hamilton, so I'm very familiar with all the municipalities. I've been asked to attend here today for the purpose of answering some questions that may arise with regards to governance issues and with regards to composition of this board. And I think as this board is aware, I previously gave an opinion with regards to composition of the board, the numbers, how they should be constituted in accordance with the Act. There were some orders in council, which the province has now indicated, notwithstanding there haven't been rescinded, are no longer valid, which have changed that assessment. I'm not here to dispute what the province is saying with regards to that. I'm here to provide any guidance or assistance and answer any questions that the board members may have. But I would like to start out from the position that it is not the position of the NPCA that they are advocating any numbers in terms of composition or any position, that it's either directed by the Act. And one of the provisions that the Act clearly provides is that the numbers and the composition of this board can always be agreed to differently than what's constituted in the Act by agreement amongst the participating municipalities. So with that having been said, the only thing I'd like to also comment on, I think it was in response to Councillor Height, there was a question, or there was a comment about 27 from Niagara. This issue arises because there are two ways of interpreting the Act that I would suggest. One of the manners in which the Act is interpreted would be to interpret the region of Niagara as the participating municipality full stop. And therefore the numbers of Niagara, the region as a whole, determine the composition. There is very clearly a provision in the Act, which is Section 4, and Section 4 provision of the Act says that once there is a upper tier municipality like Niagara, Niagara will continue as the participating municipalities for the local municipalities and will appoint members and numbers in accordance with what the local municipalities could have. So from that reading, you can get an interpretation that Niagara can have up to 27 members on this board. That provision falls under the section of the Act that deals with the originating process when the establishment of the Conservation Authority. The other provisions dealing with membership and guidance are what guide going forward. I'm not here to defend one or the other because I understand there's dispute with regards to that. I just wanted for the purpose that this board had all the information to understand where that number and where that dispute arises.
I had, that's a start. The floor still belongs to Member Height.
Thank you. Well, now that we've heard that, obviously a board of that size is unmanageable. And obviously I'd like to see the fact that I'd like to see that Halderman, Hamilton, and Niagara get together and sort this out in a proper manner. 27 from Niagara isn't going to work. Whether it be 4 or 6 from Hamilton and 2 from Halderman, let's sort this out with a meeting with the chair of the region, Hamilton and Halderman mayors, and then bring that back to this group and deal with it then. I think that would be the proper way to handle this, but I wait to hear what everyone else has to say.
Okay, and that's part of the purpose of what we're setting out here today. And so I'd like to give the floor to Member Zalepa. Go ahead, sir.
So I agree with Member Height, but I want to say that it's really important to work together, the municipalities. The Regional Council of Niagara directed the CAO to meet with the mayor of Hamilton and the officials in Haldeman to come to this agreement. So I think this is a good, we need to figure that out. It's not up to this board to decide that. And I see that the letter from Hamilton wants to put 4 people here to begin with. You know, I don't have any problem with that. Let's work cooperatively together to move forward. And then when the region, our government bodies that are in charge of the NPCA come back with a recommendation, then we can do that. So that's how I'd like to proceed with that. I think that makes sense in cooperative fashion. So that'd be great.
Thank you, Member Zalepa. I had Member Shurton.
Yeah, just to give the new members some context, how this even arose as far as the composite numbers. Based on the levy charge and the increase of Hamilton's contribution, Member Beatty brought it up last year that Hamilton should have more members on here because of their contribution of the levy. So in saying that, Member Timms thought, well, Niagara should have more members. So that's how we instructed the lawyer to go and look all the information. So it's not here that we don't want to work together. It was with him going and doing his due diligence. He reported back at our last meeting after council, after the election, of what the new numbers were. And from there, people have put their own spin to it. We've had different articles in the paper. I've had your St. Catharines Standard call me. Like, to me, you got to get control of your own circus down here.
Thank you, Member Shurton. I have Member Clark next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think on a go-forward basis, everyone in this room and 3 municipalities should respect and recognize each other's authority, each other's institution, and the authority of the individual members. When I was appointed to this, just before I was appointed to this board, I was asked to look at the Conservation Authorities Act with regard to the membership, and I did, and I came to the exact same conclusion as the legal counsel here, and I had not seen that. I then reached out to our city solicitors, here's the act, and I got the same result. Reached out to folks at Queen's Park to understand exactly if we're interpreting this right, or maybe the ministry's thinking differently, and I got the exact same result. So Hamilton moved their motion for 4 permanent members based on the assumption that the legal advice was sound, that it should be 5-4-2. All of that being said, my very first email to all of the board members here was to let's recognize that the NPCA doesn't have the authority to set composition. So let's not really get into the discussion here. It can get rather personal. It can get slightly undiplomatic at times. And it's not necessary because we really do have to work together. So going forward, we are what we are. Mayor Eisenberger met with both Councillor Johnson and myself. We talked about all of the issues. There are two real issues that the municipalities have to try to come to an arrangement on. One is composition, and if it is a mutually agreed composition where all three municipalities come to that conclusion, then it will stand the test of any challenge in the courts, and it will stand the test with the minister. So no one would interfere if we could do that. Ideally, that would be wonderful. The next question is in terms of the levy, and there's still disputes between whether or not the levy was properly allocated based on the assessment of the local watershed in Hamilton or the entire assessment area for the city of Hamilton. That's still in dispute. There is a judicial review that's underway. Not sure of the timing on that, but I know that the mayor has expressed an interest in trying to have these discussions with Regional Chair Bradley and a number of the mayors. He did not commit to me to get to everybody in Niagara. He was working through some of the larger areas and see if there's any interest in having the discussion. If those mayors shoot it down, then there's no sense moving on, and Hamilton will have to come up with another alternative. But at the present time, I think everyone is working with, Mr. Chairman, if I may, goodwill, trying to come up with that compromise, and I just don't believe it's necessary for us to have further discussion here, and I don't believe it should be in the terms of reference for the governance committee. Thank you.
Okay, so Member Whalen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With respect to the 12 appointees from Niagara, is there a time frame where the temporary basis will come forward? Like 3 months is March the 6th.
Yes, it is.
Being that my municipality will be appointing somebody from the public, should everybody be aware that that'll be the date that they should be installed, or is there a game plan with that respect?
That's a good question. I don't know. Go ahead, CAO, Barrick.
Thank you, Chair. So only the region of Niagara can appoint members. So if local municipalities are making recommendations, they are recommending to Niagara Region. So Niagara Regional Council will have to make the decision to either extend the 12 of you or to apply additional other citizen members or not. And I'll refer to Mr. DeMello as well if there's anything I missed in that.
My apologies. Your CAO is correct. I believe the appointment of the 12 members from Niagara were for a 3-month term. That appointment can always be extended further by Niagara Council should they decide to do so. But I understand the 3-month term was to allow for these issues to try to be resolved during that time before final appointments were directed. But the issue of the extension, that is entirely within the region of Niagara's decision to do because it is their appointments that they've made originally.
Okay, thank you for that. Does that clarify? And then at this point, I'm just going to ask for the vote on receiving these correspondence. All those in favor? And that's carried. Okay, moving on. The discussion folds right into the governance committee. 3.1 and can I get a mover and a seconder for the following resolution, that the board members be that the following board members be appointed to the governance committee: NPCA board chair, NPCA board vice chair, and 3 more. So that's okay.
Just to get the message, the motion on the floor.
Thank you, and a seconder, please, and member Kyokyo. So it's member Corbett, member Kyokyo. So we just started, threw it out there, and go ahead, member Corbett.
Yes, if I may, I do agree with the information that my counterpart put out from Hamilton with regard to composition of the board and that we as a board not get into the composition, whatever trying to say. But if we do, I would like to ensure that we have one member from each municipality. I'm talking about major municipalities, Niagara, Haldimand, and Hamilton, be on it to go along with that. So my preference is that you pull the composition out, leave it as such, and move ahead with that.
Any other comments or questions? Go ahead, Member Clark.
So we're only dealing with the appointment, or we're dealing with terms of reference? Is that a separate motion?
That it would be a separate motion. So just by way of clarification, and I sent everyone an email, but by way of clarification, terms of references went out merely as a suggestion to kind of get the ball rolling. We won't be dealing with them today. We're hoping that this governance committee review and come back to us in very short order with terms of reference for their responsibilities in that. Having said that, that's not part of this discussion at this point. It's just kind of a striking of a committee.
Since I was the catalyst for the motion, I think I should volunteer.
Okay. Okay. And he's accepting because he's volunteering. So, there you go. There's two forms of the discussion of the governance committee in general, and anybody volunteering. Member Greenwood.
Nominate Rob Foster.
Do you accept? Yeah, he did. Yeah. And then Member Hewson.
Are you taking nominations for both the CAO and the governance committee at this time?
No.
Just, okay, sorry.
Yeah. Member Shurton.
I'll volunteer.
So Member Zalapa nominates Member Shurton, volunteered, so he's accepted. Any other discussion about the governance committee for the purpose of this motion? So right now the motion reads that the following board members be appointed to the governance committee, NPCA board chair, and just for clarification, I would accept that. NPCA board vice chair, and then the three more are Member Clark, Member Foster, and Member Shurton. Go ahead, Member Height.
Nominations be closed.
Second. All in favor of closing the nomination? And that's carried. So now back to the main governance committee. Any final discussions on I'd like to get on the table? Then all those in favor of accepting this governance committee? And that is carried. Moving on. We have a CAO selection committee. This committee calls for 6 members, including the NPCA board chair and vice chair. So can I get a mover and a seconder for the following resolution? That the following board members be appointed to the governance committee. NPCA board chair, NPCA board vice chair, and 4 more. Can I get a mover? Oh, sorry, my mistake. It's just a typo. That is the selection committee, the CAO selection committee. That the following board members be appointed to the CAO selection committee, NPCA board chair, NPCA board vice chair, and 4 more. Can I get a mover? Member Shurton, a seconder, Member Beattie. Any discussions on that or volunteers? Member Shurton, go ahead.
Member Johnson, if she'll accept.
Member Johnson, do you accept? She's rolling her eyes and nodding her head. Member Foster.
I'd like to nominate Member Greenwood.
Member Greenwood, do you accept? Good, thank you. Member Hewson.
So I realize he's not here, but he did send an email. Bill Steele sent an email indicating he would like to have his name forward on the CAO selection committee. Is it possible to nominate Bill?
Yes, it is.
Yes, okay. I nominate Bill Steele.
He's just going to be voluntold. Member Steele. Member Height.
I nominate Tom Encina.
Member Encina, do you accept?
Yes.
We do have 4, but the nomination. Go ahead, Member Greenwood.
Nominate Pat Kyokyo.
Member Kyokyo, do you accept?
No, I'll decline. If there's 4 already, I'll decline.
Decline. Member Clark.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
Given some of the history that we've experienced and I've been catching up on media reading, the search process, will it be an open search process with the hiring of an executive search company that will actually advertise widely so that we get a good broad selection of candidates? Is that the intention?
I'm not going to speak for other members. That is something that is widely accepted as being a preferential system, but this committee is kind of going to deal with the terms of reference in the course of this week. So they're going to put forward recommendations as committees do to the board, and so there'll be an opportunity for dialogue and such. And I'm just speaking broadly, of course, but I'm not going to bind, and I don't at this point. So
I understand. So can this board then make the recommendation to the selection committee that there be a broad executive search and that a company be hired to entertain that for us, as opposed to having our staff try to deal with that, because it is a rather complicated and comprehensive process to ensure fairness across the board?
So that would be an amendment to give a little bit of direction, and if you want to just write something down quickly, and then I'll go to CAO for a response. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So the committee will make recommendations to this board, and the board can approve, amend, change however they want, versus the board making recommendations to the committee. So the committee currently is not authorized to go off and make decisions. They're there to review and make recommendations and come back to this board. That's how it is set up. However, they will meet, they'll review their own terms of reference, and those terms of reference will come back to this table and to be able to acknowledge what decision making they have or not have.
Okay, yeah, all right. So there's plenty of transparency in checks and balances, I think, as it stands at this initial stage. Go ahead, Member Greenwood.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to be away for 2 weeks, and I just wondered if this process would be starting ASAP. And if so, I would recommend that Member Kyokyo take my place on the committee, if that's possible.
So
if you can just clarify that for me.
I don't know what the desire of the committee is yet, because it hasn't been struck, but there is a certain pressure, obviously, I think that's felt by most, that this should get underway very quickly. So there's a bit of a deal here. If Pat Kyokyo would like to replace, if you'd like to rescind your...
Correct.
Okay.
Not to impede the process. I just want, if the process is to be started immediately, which it should be, I don't want to impede that process, and I'd like to...
Can I get say a mover from the other side to, if Member Greenwood's rescinding, can I get a mover to nominate Member Kyokyo? If that's, just to get that started, and I'll ask him if he accepts. That would be permanent, yeah. Member Shurton.
I gladly move that motion.
Okay. Member Kyokyo, do you accept now?
I'll accept, thank you.
All right. Yeah. So that was just a tag. Seeing no other discussion on the CAO selection committee, then I move that nominations be closed. Or sorry, I'm not moving. I'm calling for someone to move the nominations be. Member Corbett, second. Member Beatty. All those in favor of closing the nominations, and that's carried. Any other final discussion on the CAO selection committee? Seeing none. All those in favor of the CAO selection committee, please raise your hand. And opposed, and that's carried. Concludes our business. I adjourn the meeting at the hour of 10:23.